2022 has been a year of twists and turns, peak and turfs, peak for commodity and a turf for interest rates. India has managed to navigate very well. We've come out right on the top of the pedestal, both in terms of absolute and in terms of relative terms. But the energy crisis, which in a sense haunted us at the beginning of the year, have we really managed to navigate it? Is the worst behind us? What if energy prices spike again? What is the administration in a sense doing to prepare for an external shock? And to take the conversation forward, it gives me great pleasure to bring on board Union Minister of Oil and Gas and Petroleum and Urban Development, Mr. Hardeep Puri. What an honor to have you on ET Now, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Before I start the show, Minister Puri, I would like to extend season greetings on behalf of everyone from ET Now for a brilliant 2023 ahead.
Well, I thank you for that, and I take this opportunity of wishing you and through you, your viewers, I warmly reciprocate those greetings.
Mr. Puri, today we are breathing a sigh of relief. Oil is below $90 per barrel. But did you get sleepless nights when rupee was weak and Brent had touched $136, $138? Frankly, sir, did you get sleepless night? Even for one night, but did you get a sleepless night?
No, my ability to get sleep, I don't think is related to the oil price. I mean, I'm 70 years old, and I think I have seen situations where we found ourselves wittingly or unwittingly caught up in civil wars, in all kinds, facing all kinds of other challenges, presiding over the Security Council. So the direct coefficient between sleep and the oil price may not be a very good line of inquiry, but what I can tell you very candidly is that any line minister holding the portfolio that I do, if he or she says that they don't have anxiety when the price of oil shifts from $19.56 a barrel in March of 2020 to, what did you say, $138 a barrel. So I think there is all along a challenge. I liked your use of words you said about twists and turns. But I think in all these challenges, you have to navigate a course. There are some things that don't change. The fact that you consume 5 million barrels of crude oil a day is not going to change. The fact that you have 77,000 pumps in the country, and the fact that 60 million people go to the petrol bunk every day to fill up their two-wheelers, three-wheelers and cars, that's not going to change. Now, if you're a democratically elected government and you are responsive to your consumers on issues such as energy availability, energy security, then availability and affordability, you have to somehow manage that energy, let me say for mostly petrol and diesel at the bunk, is going to be available at prices which insulates your consumer from the wild fluctuation and the wild rises, that's $138 a barrel. I think the first piece of good news I can give you, which is reflected in your statement, you use the word heave a sigh of relief. I'm a little more modest than that. I think the point is, during the pandemic and thereafter, we are still looking at a challenging situation on the pandemic front. So I wouldn't call it a pandemic on the virus front. We were able, thanks to the farsightedness and maturity of the Prime Minister's policies, on two occasions, in November 2021 and May 2022, the Honorable Prime Minister decided that he was going to reduce the excise duty that the central government charges. That had a helpful effect. He also appealed to governments which are not BJP governments to do likewise. With great difficulty, one or two came on board. Others refused to let go of this source of revenue. Now, typically the price of oil at the point of production, add to that cost of insurance, freight, refining margin, exchange rate. So excise duty, if you reduce, you cushion it a little.
Yes.
The states charge a percentage VAT on it. If the state governments had followed likewise, it would have been an easier situation. Now you have a differential of something like 10 rupees between one state and another. I have never missed an opportunity to appeal to them in the interest of our economic development, in the interest of ensuring that the consumer is not unduly burdened. Where I say that we have been reasonably successful is that today there is widespread acknowledgement. You will still have some political party making hue and cry, very high oil prices. I mean, if you look at the empirical evidence, you look at around India, both on the availability and the affordability. I have in Parliament and elsewhere said, please compare the price of oil. I don't compare it because, there were no two situations that are alike. The purchasing power is different. But you take the starting point and you take where you are, let's say 1 year reference period. Just say if you've given the price in the United States and Canada at this point and in India at this point, the rise there has been 46% or 43%. Here it's been much less, much less. Gas equally. If the Saudi CP or contract price has gone up by 300% plus, we've only allowed our price to go up by 70%.
Yes.
Or thereabouts. I think we have ensured through the difficulties that even in parts of the country where there were heavy rains, our oil companies were taking the deliveries on their shoulders and making sure every consumer is listening. Are we better placed today than we were earlier? I think it's a relative judgmental thing. We've survived. We've managed to insulate our economy. Now with the economy firing on all cylinders and, Nikunj, energy and growth are intrinsically integrated. If you are growing as an economy, your energy consumption is going to go up. In India's case, there is this additional factor. Because we are a large economy by global standards, we are the 5th largest. We are a $3 trillion plus economy going on to 5 trillion. But our rate of growth has to be looked at in terms of our per capita consumption. Our per capita consumption, per capita GDP is still low.
Yes.
So if the global rate is 1% growth, we are growing at 3%.
Yes.
But more than that, you're looking at a scenario, let's say 20 years from now, where 25% of the global demand will come from India. So you're looking at the present, you're looking at a transition in terms of green energy, and you are looking at not a prospect, but a certainty that by 2047, you will be an advanced economy. Your per capita consumption will have gone up from 5 million barrels a day. It will go up to 6, 6.5, 7. Your transition, your biofuel mixing will go up sharply. Your use of compressed biogas will go up. You're already making second generation biofuels from pranali or agricultural waste. So the country is going through a fascinating transition. But as I say, in all transitions, the challenges have not resulted in our commitment and dedication to green sustainable energy being diluted even one bit.
Yes.
But you have to survive the present. And whether it's green hydrogen, which is the fuel of the future, India will be the success story.
Mr. Puri, allow me to take the conversation in two parts. First, the fact that we cushioned the Indian consumer in a rising energy scenario. That was need of the hour. Inflation was very high. But at the same time, large part of heavy lifting was done by OMCs. Oil prices in India to the spirit were completely deregularized. Oil companies were in a good state, and now suddenly oil companies are losing money. Now that oil prices have come down, will they be allowed to increase prices?
No, first of all, I am not easily persuaded to categorize and to use terms like administered pricing, regulation, etc. And I spent a few months in this ministry. I'm 1.5 years in this ministry. I can tell you that a more worthwhile and a more productive line of inquiry would be to start by saying OMCs are also good corporate citizens.
Yes.
If you're a good corporate citizen, you realize that your bread and butter, both on the cutting across the different areas, is ultimately determined by the Indian consumer. So if you insulate the consumer and you provide a certain cushion of affordability, you are the gainer in the long run. And I think there is a certain sense of maturity which, if displayed, so that the government and the others rally around. I mean, you know, when gas prices shot through the roof, it was evident to everybody that the oil companies had taken a big hit. So they asked for compensation. I think the demand for compensation, if memory serves me right, was 28,000 crores. And then the finance ministry and all of us sat down and they said they have a point. So we gave them 22,000 crores. So it's not as if they were not. But any suggestion that they get up in the morning and ask me or someone else in the government, kya price kam kar dein, badha dein? So I say it doesn't work like that. I was participating in a debate with another eminent anchor like yourself, and I was asked, so अब चुनाव खत्म हो गया, अब तो दाम बढ़ने शुरू हो जाएंगे. तो I responded in a slightly different way. मैंने कहा हमारी देश की ऐसी विशेषता है कि हमारे यहाँ चुनाव तो 12 महीने 5 साल होते रहते हैं. एक चुनाव खत्म हुआ, ऐसा नहीं होता. Hard truth, which I can tell you, is that when oil prices went up very high, there was what is called under-recovery. Now, if you get into a discussion with me, we may end up confusing each other whether how do you define under-recovery, is this fair, not fair. Fact of the matter is, they were losing money selling oil at that rate.
Yes.
We have 77,000 pumps in the country. 22,000 of them are in the private sector. And the facts are that the OMCs were selling petrol and diesel at a much lower rate than the private sector guys were saying. I'm not now criticizing the private sector, but the private sector felt that they couldn't or wouldn't. Again, they don't ask me, but I can tell you what happened. That did not deter the OMCs, but I'm told that the share of the private sector retailers came down substantially. Now, will the OMC start selling at a higher price now that they have? I would like to again look at this term. There was clearly under recovery in petrol and diesel for a long time. The petrol situation improved. There was under recovery in the diesel for a long time. I should like to think now that the situation has been arrived that both on petrol and diesel, with the global prices stabilizing and coming within a band, that they are not losing any money now. Which means at some stage they will come to you. I know them. I mean, they're very active and robust demanders also. They will come to us and say, देखिए हमारे 6 महीने में इतना नुकसान हो गया, कुछ आप करिए, etc. But it's done in a healthy environment where the country's economic growth is something that, they factor in. Because they're also very clear. If the economy grows as it is growing, even your most conservative estimates, whether they're coming from the International Monetary Fund, are also saying you're going to grow at nearly 7% or so. So I think they have behaved in a mature manner as good corporate entities. And in the coming months, they will exercise judgment. And we on our part will also be able to, devise ecosystems and divide an environment in which everybody is the gainer.
So you have to keep on balancing this whole inflationary bump up which happened because of high energy price and the importance of OMC and the financial viability of OMC and the existence of OMC.
Well, 100%. No, but why talk of our OMCs? And can I share with you a comment I made to one of the leaders in this industry, whom I met a few months ago? And I said to this gentleman, who was a very respected person, I said, look, energy, whether it is crude or anything else, this is a national sovereign asset. You're a sovereign entity, you can decide A, whether you want to sell it or you want to preserve it. When the market is higher, you decide. But let me tell you, during the pandemic, all countries, as in all countries, put stimulus packages
Yes.
into their economy. In one particular case, very large economy, the stimulus package was $20 trillion. I said, look, you've got this stimulus already chasing the same set of goods and services. You're already in an inflationary situation. If the inflationary situation is further exacerbated by high oil prices, then you're no longer in an inflationary situation. Then you are in the big R. Then you are in a recessionary condition. I'm not made that way. I don't say I told you so that. But what is the situation today? The two largest economies, the United States, they are facing challenges, but it's a very healthy economy. Otherwise, their labor markets, etc., there's resilience. But technically, quarter on quarter, there was a negative growth. But I have no, but it looks like a bright spot now. They'll, come out of it. The second largest economy is a $12 trillion economy, China. I'm not going to get into a discussion what's happening there, because I suspect none of us know exactly what is happening or the full extent of it. And then you've got Britain, France, Germany. My friend, US, China, Britain, France, Germany, if all of them are facing economic challenges, the global economy can't, India is doing well, but the point is India is part of the global economy. We'll have to face the same challenges. So I think a good starting point would be, no matter what you say for domestic consumption, it would be useful to acknowledge that high oil prices will further exacerbate the current situation and drive the global economy into the big R.
Yes.
And once that happens, again, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You have inflation, you have high oil prices, you go into recession. You go into recession, in any case, the demand drops.
Yes.
So you're back to square one. So aren't you better off to calibrate the extent of energy or the extent of crude that you produce and release into the market? Because if you talk to OPEC Plus, they'll say we don't control prices.
Yes.
To which an undergraduate student of the situation like me, which says, if you don't control price, but you control the amount of crude you let loose, your total consumption per day globally is what, 100 million barrels a day? Agar 1 million barrel bhi usme kam ho jata hai,
Yeah.
price goes like this. And if 3 countries in the world, you've got some form of restrictions, Venezuela, Iran, and you've got this price cap issue with the Russian, I think if you reach a situation, you have to be very careful on how you navigate through this.
But on oil diplomacy, Minister Puri, I think it's been a victory for us. Just to put it on record, how much of the oil in India is now coming from Russia, and do you see that number increasing in 2023?
First of all, you don't determine how much you're going to buy from X or Y. The purchasing is done by the private sector and the OMCs according to price. They've got term arrangements, they've got spot, etc. I started by telling you we consume about 5 million barrels a day. For a long time, prior to 31st March 2022, our largest suppliers were, and in many ways continue to be, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, maybe somebody else, roughly at the level of 800, 900,000 barrels a day. Russia ended up the previous fiscal year ending 31st March with 0.2%.
Okay.
Today, Russia is, I think last month was the largest supplier. In between they did, Iraq overtook them. Our oil companies, or for matter any entity in the world, will buy from wherever they're getting at the cheapest rate. So in other words, what you call success, I don't share that. I think we have, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I will. I think we've reached a point of maturity where we'll play the market card, because we are one of the defined consumers, and if you have to buy 5 million barrels a day, obviously we will buy from someone who's giving it to us on better terms.
I'll take a leaf from your earlier answer, which is that we need to secure our future energy needs. If I look at what China has done, they've entered into long-term agreements with Qatar and other oil-producing nations for long-term contracts. Is it time that India should think
we are doing that all
lines?
the time. We are doing that all the time. I think we still have about 6-8 years to go for our gas arrangement with the deal with Qatar. I mean, whatever the arrangement. So we will do that. But long-term agreements, as in really long-term, they have their pluses and minuses also. If you do long-term agreements and the prices come crashing down, then depends on what you've negotiated. If you've negotiated prevailing price, it's one thing. But offtake, etc. So these are all volatile things. So, but I want to thank you very much for this conversation. I have to now literally run to be able to catch a flight. But I enjoyed this conversation. I'd be very happy to continue this.
Really appreciate that. Thank you very well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.